It is very rare that a fighter gets an opportunity with a single bout to do something that no other fighter in UFC history has ever done before. But that is exactly what we're getting with Alexander Volkanovski here at UFC 314 this coming weekend. Now, everybody knows the score. Volkanovski is returning, and he's fighting Diego Lopes for the unclaimed but undisputed UFC featherweight title. It did belong to Ilia Topuria, who did beat Volkanovski, and of course then he beat Max Holloway, but then he left the division. So it is the full weight class title, and it is unclaimed. Fantastic fight, lots to enjoy about it. But I mentioned just a moment ago that no fighter has done what Volkanovski is going to get the opportunity to do. So what is that? Well, it's simply stated just like this. No fighter in UFC history has ever lost back-to-back fights and then won an undisputed UFC title. It's never happened before. Now, there are some cases where guys tried, but they couldn't ultimately do it. And there is one case where someone kind of got halfway there. Let's talk about it. Now, let me give some credit to Mike Bond. I actually have a different point than him, but he and I talked before making this video, and he has some good notes around this topic over at MMA Junkie. I'll put a link to that in the description box below. There have been 6 cases where a fighter had 2 back-to-back losses and then fought for a title, and their record in those fights is 1-5. 1-5. So let's go through them. Who are the 5 that we're discussing here? Let's start. The first would be Frankie Edgar at UFC 156. He was facing Jose Aldo in that contest for the featherweight title. He had lost 2 previous fights before that, both to Benson Henderson, one by unanimous decision, one via split decision. Then there's Jose Aldo at UFC 251. He, at featherweight, fights Alexander Volkanovski, loses, changes weight classes, fights Marlon Moraes, loses that via split, although it's somewhat controversial, still fought in a title fight at UFC 251 against Petr Yan, but then he lost that one via TKO. Then there's Yoel Romero at UFC 248. He had lost previously to Robert Whittaker, and then, of course, Paulo Costa, but then got a title shot against Israel Adesanya, and then lost via unanimous decision there anyway. Then there's Tank Abbott against Maurice Smith at UFC 15. Now, he had lost 2 prior to that, both of them via stoppage. That'll be important in a minute. One to Vitor Belfort and one to Don Frye, although only one of those happened via TKO. One of them happened by submission. We'll come back to that. Then there was John Lober trying to win the title from Frank Shamrock, having lost 2 previous, but the 2 previous actually was more than 2 previous, and they weren't even in the UFC, and this was in 1998 at UFC Brazil, long time ago. So that leaves us 5 losses. I mentioned there was one who had done it. Who was it? The answer is Randy Couture. Randy Couture lost to Josh Barnett, then loses to Rico Rodriguez, then beats Chuck Liddell at UFC 43 to claim the interim light heavyweight title. Those are the only 6, and those are the 6 results. But here's the thing. There are 2 important differences that we really have to keep in mind. As good as Couture looked at UFC 43 beating Chuck Liddell, and he looked fantastic, and as impressive as it was that he came back from those back-to-back stoppage losses to Barnett and Rodriguez, there are 2 important differences. Number 1, when Couture did win at UFC 43, it was for an interim title, not a full weight class title. And number 2, he was able to change weight classes to get this opportunity and to do well. Now, it's obviously very impressive that he was able to do that. In fact, he did that several times in his career to advance it. But that's not what Volkanovski is doing here. It's a full weight class title, and he's not changing weight classes. He is staying in the weight class that has been his home, essentially, for all of his best work, and a very, very competitive one at that. Now, I grant that Ilia is gone from the division, so it kind of changes it up a little bit. But once again, it just shows you how special and unique what Volkanovski is doing. And to that effect, I'm going to say it one more time. No fighter in UFC history has lost 2 back-to-back fights and then claimed in the 3rd fight an undisputed, full-on UFC weight class title. That is why Alexander Volkanovski is on the precipice of history here if he can come back and get this win. More to the point, while Couture did lose both of his 2 fights via TKO and then won that interim title, all the other names that I mentioned, the 5 other names, they either were all decision losses or some combination of decision and then 1 stoppage. Or in the case of Tank Abbott, you had 2 stoppages, but 1 was via submission. Now, why do I bring all of this up? Well, Volkanovski, remember, is coming back from 2 stoppage losses in a row, both via strikes. And those are the kinds of things that can A, psychologically impact you, and B, they can reduce your durability over time. Like, Part of the reason why we have such a small sample size of only 6 fighters that we can pick from is that most fighters just don't find themselves in a position where they could lose 2 times and all of a sudden just be in title contention. That's why oftentimes in the case of Edgar, as we just mentioned, in the case of Aldo, and in the case of Couture and some other ones, they were changing weight classes. That's what they were trying to do. They were trying to reinvent themselves. That offers a new set of possibilities. That's why you can jump to the front of the queue. And now again, Ilya missing makes that possible. But what I just want to point out here is this is the full weight class title. There is no other boogeyman behind the door. Whoever wins this is the guy. And nobody else on top of that has come back from being stopped via strikes 2 times in order to get this opportunity and to win. In other words, Volkanovski is attempting what is not obviously exactly the impossible, but seems extremely daunting. Even the very best names that I mentioned, Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar, Randy Couture, these are all UFC Hall of Famers. Now, I think it's obvious Volkanovski, who is easily one of the best featherweights to ever do it, will join the ranks of the Hall of Famers sooner or later. But that's the kind of company he's in already, and this is the kind of thing he's trying to do. This is the level to which he is trying to raise his game. Nobody, not even those Hall of Famers, could do exactly what he is attempting at UFC 314 on Saturday. There's already all these important questions around this bout. What's Volkanovski's future? Can he still compete at this level? Blah, blah, blah. All the things that are normal. And of course, what are the stakes? Oh, it's a UFC title fight. These are enormous, enormous stakes. Of course, the whole thing. But the bigger, broader picture to me is part of the reason why these odds are close is not that Volkanovski has not proven to fight and defeat better guys or has proven to be a better featherweight. He's easily the most talented featherweight maybe of all time, and certainly one of the very best of all time, if not the best. But he is attempting something that is exceedingly difficult. To get stopped via strikes twice and then come back and win a weight class title is something that, as I've been saying this entire video, no one's even done before. And again, the added stakes here are, even if he had lost both of those via decision, no one's even done that. No one's even done that. If he hadn't had all that damage, if he hadn't had all that doubt, if he hadn't had all that time off. Now you add in that part, and that to me is why these odds are close. Volkanovski is, at a technical level, he's better than Diego Lopes. But where is he? Where is he mentally? Where is he physically? Not where is he skillfully, but where is he in those other questions? And to me, I have to say, I don't know if he's going to win on Saturday. Your guess is truly just as good as mine, if not better. But what I can say is, part of the way in which people were framing this fight is, oh, it's the Volk redemption tour, and it's Volk maybe getting his title back, or we're crowning a new weight class champion. And that's the sum total of this argument. But to me, actually, folks have lamented, well, even if Volk wins, he can't get that rematch against Ilya. Yeah, probably not. That's probably gone. At age 36, I don't know if that's really going to be likely. He has to go back to 55, and he already tried that, and it didn't go well. I don't know if the UFC is even going to have an appetite for that. Even despite all of that, he can do something absolutely extraordinary on Saturday. He can define his legacy in all kinds of new ways that we weren't even considering before. He can do something that literally has never been done in the history of this organization. Not like this. People have gotten kind of close. Not like this. This is different. This is much more difficult to do. I love that he's got an opportunity to add to his legacy, and it's got nothing to do with Ilia Topuria. I like that he's got an opportunity to add to his legacy. It's got nothing to do with Max at this point anyway, or even before that, obviously the results of the losses to Islam. He's got a new way to add to his already sterling resume, and he doesn't have to do any kind of retread. But he still has to climb a very, 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 very steep hill. For all the folks who said, yeah, what does it mean if he gets his title back? That's cool. That's good for his legacy. That's certainly redemptive. But, it's going to miss something because Ilya's not there. Okay, yeah, it will. It will miss a little something. But this reality that he's trying, this leap that he's attempting, to me, that makes up for not quite the whole thing, but it makes up for a lot. If you can suffer that kind of setback and get your title, and then get your title in a way where one more time, literally no one in the history of this organization has ever done it this way, man, it's such an awesome opportunity to show how special you are again, to show how special you've always been, to be perfectly honest. and to do it in a way where we don't have to worry about the individual parts of the matchmaking to make that happen. Just this feat alone would get him to that place. But at the same time, Diego Lopes, in some sense, has history on his side, not because of what necessarily he's done, but about what obstacle he presents. Man, I cannot wait for UFC 314. I cannot wait for the return of Volk. And this fight with these kinds of stakes, man, I'm not going to look down on Volkanovski if he doesn't get this. Of course, his resume is already a Hall of Fame resume. But if he does this, after all of the setback, after all of the doubt, after all of those terrible losses, yeah, the first loss to Islam wasn't bad, but it's 3 out of 4, and the last 2 were devastating. To come back and still be able to do on the wrong side of 35, so to speak, what seems like the impossible, man, that would be truly, truly something special and quite literally historic. We'll see if he can do it on Saturday night. Peace.